Wolves cornered a lion cub by the creek. What happened next will move you to tears. In the heart of the African wilderness, danger hides behind every shadow. One small lion cub, fragile and alone, found himself trapped near a creek, surrounded by a hungry pack of wolves. With no mother to protect him and no pride in sight, it seemed certain that this tiny life would be taken too soon. But what happened in that moment shocked everyone who witnessed it, and what followed would reveal the true meaning of courage, survival, and unexpected loyalty. This is not just a story of a cub in danger. It's a story that will remind you how hope can rise even in the darkest moments. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. That way, you'll never miss the most powerful and emotional animal stories we bring to you every week. The African savanna is beautiful, but beauty can be deceiving. Beneath the glow of the setting sun, when the air turns gold and the riverbeds reflect fire in the sky, the wild reminds everyone that survival is never guaranteed. Predators and prey move in an endless dance, and the smallest misstep can decide whether life continues or ends. It was at such an hour, near the banks of a winding creek that cut through a dry valley, that a lion cub found himself alone. His paws were too small for the distance he had traveled, his breathing too fast for the dangers closing in. The cub had wandered too far from the pride while chasing a butterfly, his innocent curiosity leading him into a world where no mother's roar could protect him. The cub's name, if one could be given, was Keto, meaning precious in the language of the rangers who would later hear of him. He was no more than 4 months old, his fur still fluffy with youth, his eyes wide and curious, yet trembling with fear as the world closed in around him. At first, he thought the creek would be safe. He drank from its shallow edges, the cool water soothing his parched throat. But he wasn't alone. A low growl rippled across the tall grass, followed by the patting of paws that moved with dreadful rhythm. Keto froze, the fur along his back bristling. His small ears twitched, and his eyes darted across the shadows. From the east, shapes emerged, dark, lean, and hungry. Wolves, 5 of them, stepped into the clearing, their eyes glowing with a mix of hunger and calculation. They were outsiders to this land, a rogue pack that had migrated in search of food, fearless enough to challenge anything smaller than themselves. And to them, a lion cub separated from his pride was the perfect prey. Keto's tiny body crouched low, instinct telling him to shrink, to hide, but there was no tall grass thick enough, no mother's tail to vanish beneath. His paws pressed into the damp earth by the creek. He let out a small, pitiful growl, his baby teeth flashing. The sound was thin, shaky, and the wolves answered with deep snarls that sent shivers racing through his fragile frame. The leader of the pack, a scarred wolf with gray fur streaked across his back, stepped forward, his head lowered, his eyes locked on the cub. The others fanned out, forming a circle. Keto's heart pounded so hard it felt as though the whole savanna could hear it. He tried to back away, but his paw slipped into the water, splashing. The sound echoed like a signal of weakness. The wolves advanced. The cub let out a desperate cry. It was not the commanding roar of a lion king, but the squeak of a child calling for his mother. The sound rose into the air and scattered across the valley, carried by the wind. Somewhere far away, perhaps another lion might hear it. But at this moment, no one came. The wolves lunged forward in unison, their fangs glinting in the fading sunlight. Keto's legs tensed. He stumbled back against the muddy edge of the creek. Behind him, the water was shallow but wide enough to cut off escape. In front of him, death had teeth dug into the dirt. He hissed, growled, and even swiped at the air, his spirit refusing to surrender even as fear consumed him. The scarred wolf leapt first, his body stretched across the ground, jaws wide. Keto's eyes squeezed shut, bracing for the inevitable. But then, from a ridge above the creek, another sound thundered, a roar, deep and commanding, echoing across the valley like rolling thunder. The wolves skidded to a halt, their ears pricking, their heads whipping toward the ridge. Keto opened his eyes, blinking against the sunlight that painted the figure descending the slope. It was not his mother. It was not his pride. It was a lone ranger. His name was Daniel Hayes, an American wildlife volunteer who had dedicated his life to working with African conservation projects. At 31, he had seen enough of the savannah to know its brutal rules, but he had also seen enough to know when to break them. With his khaki uniform dusted from hours of patrol and a heavy wooden staff in his hand, he looked down at the wolves with fire in his eyes. He had been walking the ridges when he heard the cubs cry. At first, he thought it was just a distant call of birds, but the pitch, high, desperate, pulled him off the trail. Now, looking down, he saw what few had ever witnessed, a circle of wolves surrounding a lion cub by a creek. Daniel's heart pounded. He knew the risks. Wolves, desperate and hungry, would not easily back down. But he also knew he couldn't stand by. That cub was fighting for his life, and no one else would come. He roared again. Not the roar of a lion, but the shout of a man unwilling to let death win so easily. He banged his staff against the rocks, the sound cracking like a gunshot. Dust rose. The wolves flinched, their formation breaking slightly. Keto's eyes widened. For a moment, his fear shifted into something else, confusion, perhaps even hope. Daniel slid down the ridge, his boots digging into the dirt. The wolves growled, regrouping, but he swung his staff wide, striking the ground between them and the cub. The sound echoed like thunder. The scarred wolf bared his teeth, unwilling to yield. He stepped forward, snapping at the air, his yellow eyes burning with challenge. Daniel stood his ground. "Not today," he muttered, tightening his grip on the staff. Behind him, the cub whimpered, pressing against the creek's edge, too terrified to move. His small body shivered with every sound, but his eyes never left the stranger standing between him and death. The standoff stretched, each heartbeat heavier than the last. The wolves tested the air, snapping their jaws, circling tighter. Daniel's muscles ached, his mind raced. One wrong move and both he and the cub would fall. The scarred wolf lunged again, faster this time. Daniel swung his staff with all his strength. The wood cracked against the ground in front of the wolf's paws, spraying dirt. Startled, the wolf skidded back, growling. The others hesitated, uneasy. For the first time, doubt flickered in their eyes. Daniel shouted again, his voice echoing across the valley. "Go!" The wolves snarled, paced, then slowly retreated, one step at a time. Hunger still gnawed at them, but instinct told them this battle wasn't worth it. One by one, they backed into grass, their eyes lingering, until finally the scarred wolf turned and led them away. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of the creek. Daniel dropped to one knee, his chest heaving. He turned to the cub. "You're safe now," he whispered. Keto's eyes were wide, still trembling with fear, but in that gaze was something more, the beginning of trust. And as the last light of the sun faded, Daniel realized this was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of one. But would he be able to save the cub from the wilderness that had already marked him as prey? The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the savannah cloaked in twilight. The golden warmth had faded into muted blues and purples, and the first cries of night predators echoed from the distance. Daniel Hayes knew he couldn't linger. The wolves might retreat for now, but hunger always returned. The cub at his feet, small, trembling, fragile, was a target too easy for the night. Daniel crouched, his staff resting against his shoulder, and extended a careful hand. "Easy, little one," he whispered. "I won't hurt you." The lion cub, Keto, flinched at the movement. His small chest heaved, his wide eyes gleaming with the last traces of fading sunlight. He tried to crawl backward, pressing himself against the bank of the creek as if the earth could swallow him into safety. His soft growl was barely a rumble, but Daniel heard the defiance in it. The cub was terrified, yet unwilling to surrender. Daniel admired that spirit. It was the same spark he'd seen in rescued animals before, the refusal to give up even when the odds screamed otherwise. But admiration wouldn't save the cub. The night would be merciless. He glanced at the path leading back to the ranger outpost. It was at least 2 hours on foot, more if the cub resisted. The bush was alive with danger. Hyenas, leopards, even scavenging birds would not hesitate to prey on the weak. "You've got two choices, little guy," Daniel murmured. "Come with me or face this place alone." He slowly reached again, this time removing the canteen from his belt. He unscrewed the top and tilted it slightly, letting droplets spill into his palm. The cub's ears twitched. His nose lifted, catching the scent of water. Curiosity overcame fear. Inch by inch, Keto crawled forward, sniffing the air. His rough pink tongue darted out, licking Daniel's wet palm. "There you go," Daniel said softly. "See? I'm not the enemy." When Keto leaned closer, Daniel moved with care, sliding his arm gently under the cub's belly. The small body tense, claws pricking into Daniel's sleeve, but Keto didn't fight. His body was exhausted. He gave a soft whimper, curling against Daniel's chest as if too tired to resist. Daniel exhaled. "Good boy. You're safe now." With the cub cradled in one arm and his staff in the other, Daniel began the long trek back to camp. The savannah transformed under moonlight. Shadows stretched, insects buzzed, and the calls of unseen predators echoed with haunting persistence. Each sound made Daniel's heart pound faster. He wasn't just responsible for himself anymore. He carried a life that could so easily be extinguished. Halfway to the outpost, a rustle in the tall grass stopped him cold. His grip on the staff tightened, his muscles tense. Two yellow eyes gleamed in the dark, low to the ground. Hyena. The scavenger crept forward, teeth glinting. Its laugh-like snarl pierced the air. Daniel shifted the cub higher against his chest and raised the staff, slamming it into the earth. The sound cracked through the night. The hyena hesitated but didn't retreat. Its hunger was stronger than fear. "Not tonight," Daniel muttered through clenched teeth. He swung the staff wide, striking the ground again. The cub whimpered, burrowing against him, but Daniel stood his ground. A second hyena appeared, then a third, their forms circling in the shadows. Daniel's pulse spiked. He couldn't outrun them with the cub in his arms. He bellowed, a deep roar that echoed across the plain. "Get out!" His staff cracked against the earth again, sparks of anger fueling his strength. The hyenas snarled, circling closer, but then a distant sound cut through the night. A vehicle engine, headlights in the far distance. The hyenas froze, uneasy, their ears twitching. In seconds, they melted back into the tall grass, swallowed by the night. Daniel exhaled sharply, sweat trickling down his temple. That was too close. He pressed on, every step fueled by determination. When he finally reached the outpost, the headlights belonged to a ranger jeep pulling in from patrol. The other rangers jumped out, their voices echoing. "Daniel, what is that in your arms?" One called. "A lion cub," Daniel replied, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. The men rushed forward, their eyes wide. One of them, a tall ranger named Joseph, frowned. "You can't bring him here. He doesn't belong with us. If you interfere, the pride will reject him. That's nature's way." Daniel shook his head, clutching the cub tighter. Nature's way is death for him. Wolves nearly tore him apart. If I hadn't stepped in, he'd be gone already. Joseph crossed his arms. "And what then? You raise him? You play God with nature?" The other rangers exchanged uneasy glances. Some nodded at Joseph's words. Others looked at the cub with pity. Daniel felt his temper flare. "I'm not playing God. I'm giving him a chance. Look at him. He's dehydrated, half-starved. You want to throw him back out there and pretend you didn't hear him cry?" Keto stirred in Daniel's arms, his small body trembling. His tiny claws clutched Daniel's shirt as if refusing to let go. That sight silenced the argument more effectively than words. Finally, Joseph sighed. "Fine. One night. But tomorrow we decide what to do." Daniel nodded. He knew it wasn't victory, only a temporary reprieve, but it was enough. He carried the cub inside his tent, laying him gently on a folded blanket. Keto curled into a ball instantly, his breathing shallow but steady. Daniel knelt beside him, studying the fragile creature. "Precious," he murmured. "That's what Keto means. And that's what you are." The cub blinked at him, his golden eyes heavy with exhaustion. For the briefest moment, Daniel thought he saw something in them, not just fear, but trust. As Daniel sat back, the weight of the day crashed down on him. Wolves, hyenas, arguments with his team. Every part of his body ached. Yet, looking at the cub sleeping beside him, he felt something else too, a strange sense of purpose. But purpose came with consequences. He knew Joseph was right in one sense, Raising a lion cub was no small task. Sanctuaries were crowded, funding scarce. If Keto stayed, it would cost money, time, and energy none of them had. Daniel leaned his head back against the cot, eyes closing. Outside, the sounds of night echoed, the roars of lions far in the distance, the howls of wolves, the laughter of hyenas. The savannah was alive, merciless, unrelenting. And somewhere out there, perhaps, Keto's pride was searching. Or perhaps they had abandoned him altogether. Daniel opened his eyes, looking at the cub once more. "No matter what they say," he whispered, "I'll fight for you. You deserve a chance." Keto shifted in his sleep, a tiny paw pressing against Daniel's arm as if answering a promise. Daniel smiled faintly, exhaustion tugging at his eyelids. Tomorrow would bring battles, arguments with rangers, questions from officials, and perhaps even danger from the wild itself. But tonight, there was only one truth. A man and a lion cub, both alone in their own way, finding comfort in each other's presence. Yet even as sleep pulled at him, Daniel couldn't shake the question that echoed in his mind. Would saving Keto bring hope or ruin? The dawn spread pale light across the outpost, casting long shadows over the tin roofs and weathered wooden posts. Birds chirped noisily in the trees, but the usual calm of the morning was broken by tense voices rising from the ranger station. Daniel stood with his arms crossed, his jaw tight, as Joseph and two other rangers debated fiercely about the cub sleeping inside his tent. "We can't keep him," Joseph insisted, his deep voice booming over the others. "It's not our job to raise lions. If the pride doesn't take him back, nature has made its choice." "Nature's choice is death," Daniel shot back. "You saw what happened by the creek. Wolves nearly tore him apart. If I'd left him there, he'd be gone." One of the younger rangers, Kamau, shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should call Dr. Maya Ellison at the Kasiwa Sanctuary. She has space for cubs." Joseph cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Space? That sanctuary is drowning in mouths to feed. Unless you can conjure money from the air, they won't take another one." Daniel's eyes hardened. "Then I'll find a way. I don't care how." The debate dragged on, but nothing was resolved. At last, Joseph muttered under his breath and stormed off, leaving Daniel standing in the doorway of his tent. He glanced inside. Keto was curled into a ball on the blanket, tiny chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. His fur was damp from the water Daniel had dripped into his mouth during the night. Daniel knelt beside him, stroking the cub's back gently. "You're stronger than they think," he whispered. "But you need time. I'll buy it for you." By midday, the sky turned strange. Clouds gathered, heavy and gray, blocking the sun. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Daniel had grown used to storms sweeping the savannah, but this one felt different, urgent, as though nature itself was adding to tension already pulling at his chest. Keto stirred as the first clap of thunder cracked across the plains. His small body stiffened, his ears flattened. He let out a frightened mew, pawing at the blanket. To him, the thunder wasn't weather. It was a growl of predators he couldn't see. Daniel scooped him up, cradling him against his chest. "Easy, little one. It's just the sky shouting." But Keto shook, his paws clawing gently into Daniel's shirt. Daniel reached for the feeding syringe and coaxed a few drops of milk substitute into the cub's mouth. The taste calmed him a little, but not enough. His golden eyes darted toward the tent's opening, where the storm was swelling. Then, cutting through the thunder, another sound rose, the eerie chorus of howls. Wolves. Daniel froze. The pack had returned. Their cries carried across the valley, closer this time, weaving with the rumble of thunder. Keto whimpered, pressing his face into Daniel's chest, his tiny heart racing so hard Daniel could feel it. Outside, the rangers shouted, their boots pounding against the dirt. "They're circling," Kamau yelled. "I saw 3 near the ridge." Daniel stood quickly, clutching the cub. "They're after him. They want to finish what they started." Joseph appeared in the doorway, rifle slung across his shoulder. "Then we end this now. Give me the cub. If they smell him here, they won't stop." "No," Daniel barked. "You'll terrify him. He won't survive another chase." Joseph's face hardened. "And if they attack the outpost?" If someone dies protecting your pet, the word stung. Pet Daniel glanced down at Keto, whose tiny claws still dug into his shirt. The cub wasn't a pet. He was life itself, clinging to the only person who had chosen to stand between him and death. Before Daniel could answer, another voice rang out, a new one, steady and official. Enough. Everyone turned. A tall man in a dark green uniform stepped into the camp. His badge gleamed in the dim light. Wildlife Authority. His name was Officer Mbeal, and his expression was carved from stone. I receive reports, Mbeal said firmly, scanning the camp. His eyes landed on the cub in Daniel's arms. You are harboring a lion. That is against regulation. Daniel stepped forward. This cub will be dead without me. Wolves cornered him. Hyenas stalked him. I had no choice. There is always a choice, Mbeal replied, and the law is clear. You interfere, you weaken the balance. Return the cub to the wild. A heavy silence followed. Thunder rolled above them. The wolves howled again, closer, like shadows waiting at the edge of the storm. Keto whimpered softly, his golden eyes lifting to Daniel's face. He didn't understand laws or balance. He only understood fear and trust. His small paw pressed against Daniel's chest, as if to say, "Don't let them take me." Daniel clenched his jaw. If I put him back, he dies. Is that what you want? To watch a cub torn apart while we hide behind rules? Beale didn't flinch. We do not play gods with nature. The words struck Daniel, but he didn't retreat. I'm not playing God. I'm being human. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the camp in a flash of white. The wind whipped through the tents, carrying the scent of rain and the faint musk of predators on the prowl. The storm was nearly here, and with it, the wolves. Joseph stepped forward, his voice low. If we don't decide soon, they'll come through that fence. And then it won't matter who's right. Daniel's heart pounded. He looked at Keto again. The trembling body, the desperate eyes, the paw pressed to his chest. He had saved him once by the creek. Could he save him again here, against storms, wolves, and even his own allies? Thunder roared louder. The wolves' cries rose, echoing across the night. Keto whimpered, curling tighter into Daniel's arms. Daniel knew the storm wasn't only outside. It was here, within the camp, within himself. And as the rain began to fall in heavy sheets, one question burned hotter than the lightning tearing the sky. Would he be strong enough to fight everyone, the predators of the wild and the predators of doubt, for the life of one precious cub? The storm broke over Savannah like a drumbeat of war. Rain hammered the tin roofs of the ranger outpost, spilling in cold sheets across the dusty earth. Lightning split the sky again and again, throwing the camp into harsh flashes of white before drowning it in darkness. The air reeked of wet earth and fear. Daniel held Keto tightly inside his tent, shielding the cub's fragile body from the cold gust of wind that blew through the flaps. The little lion shook with each crash of thunder, his claws digging into Daniel's shirt. Daniel whispered, "I've got you. I won't let go." But outside, the wolves had come. Their howls pierced the roar of the storm, weaving like shadows between the thunderclaps. Joseph and the rangers shouted commands, their voices desperate against the storm's fury. Flashlights bobbed through the rain as men patrolled the perimeter fences. Then came the sound Daniel had feared most. Snarling, frantic barking, claws scraping against the wire fence that encircled the camp. The wolves were testing it. They wanted the cub. Daniel pushed Keto deeper into the blankets, but the cub whimpered, as if sensing that danger pressed close. Daniel's staff rested by the cot, but against 5 or 6 wolves, who would only by moments, he felt a familiar tightness in his chest, the knowledge that he had stepped into a fight bigger than himself. The tent flap ripped open, and Joseph stormed in, drenched and furious. "This is on you," he shouted over rain. "They're here because of that cub. We warned you." Daniel rose to his feet, the cub still in his arms. "And what did you expect me to do? Leave him to die in the mud? Let them tear him apart." "This isn't about your heart, Daniel." Joseph roared. "It's about survival. Ours. Theirs. His." Before Daniel could respond, Officer Mbeal appeared behind Joseph, water running down his uniform. His face was grim, unreadable. Enough. Give me the cub. Daniel's grip tightened protectively. No, you are putting this camp in danger, Beale pressed. This animal belongs to the wild, not in your arms. If the wolves breach, blood will spill. Then let them come for me, Daniel growled. But they won't have him. Keto whimpered again, pressing his tiny head into Daniel's chest. The sound was so small, so innocent, it cut through the noise like glass. For a moment, even Joseph's expression flickered with hesitation. But then a scream ripped through the camp. One of the rangers at the fence. They're breaking through. Breaking through. Daniel didn't wait. He snatched up his staff with one hand, securing Keto in the crook of his arm with the other, and pushed past Joseph and Beale into the storm. The rain slapped against his face, but adrenaline burned hotter than fear. The fence rattled violently. Yellow eyes glowed in the dark, lightning revealing the scarred wolf leading the pack. His fur was plastered to his body, his teeth bared. The storm had turned the wolves into shadows of nightmare, their hunger sharpened by desperation. The rangers fired shots into the air. The thunder rifles cracked, but the wolves didn't scatter. Hunger was stronger than fear tonight. They circled, snarling, snapping at the wires, testing every weakness. Daniel shouted over the chaos. Get more light on the perimeter. They hate fire. Use the torches. Joseph glared at him, but barked the order anyway. Rangers scrambled, lighting makeshift torches from kerosene lanterns, holding them high against the rain. Smoke and flame licked the air, and for a moment the wolves wavered. But the scarred wolf only growled louder, pacing along the fence until he found the weakest corner where the ground had softened from rain. With a vicious leap, he slammed against the wire. The fence bent inward. Reinforce it. Joseph bellowed. Daniel's mind raced. He couldn't stay behind the walls. The wolves weren't giving up, not while they smelled Keto inside. This cub was a beacon, a prize, and the pack would risk everything to claim him. Beale's voice rang out. Hayes, hand over the cub. You are making yourself a target. Daniel turned on him, rain streaming down his face. He's already the target. I won't let them have him. And then, in that moment of defiance, the fence gave way. The scarred wolf broke through, snarling as mud sprayed under his paws. Two others followed, their bodies slick with rain, their eyes locked on the scent of the cub. Chaos exploded. Rangers shouted, firing shots into the ground, waving torches. But the wolves darted through the storm, too fast, too desperate. Daniel shoved Keto into a nearby crate, slamming the lid shut with just enough air holes for breathing. Stay, he whispered, his voice trembling. Stay safe. The cub cried, scratching at the wood, but Daniel grabbed his staff and turned toward the wolves. His body braced, his heart hammering. He had never felt more alive or more terrified. The scarred wolf lunged first. Daniel swung his staff with everything he had, striking the beast across the muzzle. The wolf yelped, blood spraying, but recovered instantly, circling back with fury. The second wolf came from the side, teeth snapping. Daniel blocked with the staff, the wood vibrating with the impact. Rain blinded him. Mud sucked at his boots, and the storm screamed in his ears. But all he could think of was the crate behind him and the tiny heartbeat it protected. Joseph appeared at his side, rifle in hand. Move, he shouted, firing a warning shot over the wolf's head. The bullet cracked the night, forcing the animal to retreat for only a breath. Daniel gasped, his arms trembling from the fight. Joseph glared at him, rain streaming down his face. I told you this would happen. And yet, Daniel spat back, gripping his staff tighter. You're still fighting beside me. A third wolf lunged from the dark, but this time Joseph's rifle cracked, and the beast tumbled into the mud. The others hesitated, circling, their eyes darting to the crate. Daniel's chest heaved. He could see it clearly now. The wolves weren't just after any prey. They wanted that cub. And as long as Keto remained here, the fight wouldn't end. Beale's voice cut through the storm. Hayes, do you understand now? He cannot stay. He endangers us all. Daniel's grip on his staff tightened. He glanced at the crate, the cub scratching, crying, helpless. His heart ached. Thunder split the sky, the rain pouring harder, and in that moment, Daniel realized what he had to do. He turned to Joseph and Beale, his voice raw. "Open the gates." Both men stared at him like he'd gone mad. "What?" Joseph barked. "Open them." Daniel roared. "If they want me, they'll have me, but I won't let them touch him." The wolves snarled, advancing again. Daniel grabbed the crate, holding it against his chest, and stepped toward the open plain beyond the outpost. His body shook, but his voice steadied with each word. "If this storm demands sacrifice, then it will be mine, not his." Joseph's eyes widened. "You'll die out there." "Maybe," Daniel said, his eyes blazing. "But if I do, I'll make sure this cub lives to see tomorrow." He pushed past them, stepping into the storm. The scarred wolf's eyes locked onto his. A predator recognizing not prey, but a rival. Rain pounded down. Lightning ripped the sky, and the two forces, the lone man with a cub in his arms and the pack of starving wolves, stood at the edge of battle. And as the wind howled through the savannah, one question remained. Could courage alone stand against the wild? The storm crashed over savannah with relentless fury. Rain sheeted across the outpost. Thunder rolled like cannon fire, and lightning split the night sky into jagged silver scars. Daniel stood at the gate, his boots sinking into the mud, the crate pressed tightly to his chest. Inside, Keto whimpered, the sound small against the roar of the storm and the snarls of the wolves gathering beyond the fence. Behind him, Joseph shouted warnings, and Beale barked orders, and rangers scrambled with torches and rifles. But Daniel heard none of it. His focus was narrowed to the scarred wolf leading the pack. Yellow eyes locked on the crate, lips curled back to reveal long, glistening fangs. "They'll come whether the gates are closed or not," Daniel said, his voice steady though his heart pounded. "Better they face me away from a man." Joseph's voice cracked with disbelief. "You'll die out there." "Maybe." Daniel shot back, gripping the staff in one hand. "But if I fall keeping him safe." He stepped beyond the fence. Rain lashed his face, wind tore his clothes, and mud clung to his legs with every stride. He climbed a low ridge of black stone, setting the crate down on higher ground. "Stay," he whispered through the slats. "Stay brave." Keto pressed his tiny paw against the wood, golden eyes wide, searching for Daniel's face. The sight cut him to the bone. He tightened his grip on the staff and turned toward the pack. The scarred wolf snarled, signaling the attack. Two wolves darted forward, bodies low, fast as shadows. Daniel swung the staff, with cracking against one's muzzle. It yelped and stumbled, but the other lunged at his side. He pivoted, blocking, feeling the jolt tear through his arms. His breath came ragged, the rain blinding, but he held his ground. Another wolf circled toward the crate. Daniel's stomach dropped. "No!" he roared, slamming the staff into the mud to cut its path. He stood between predator and cub, his body trembling but unyielding. Then, in the chaos of lightning and storm, a sound split the night, a roar vast and commanding, deeper than the thunder itself. The wolves froze. Their ears flattened, their bodies dropped low, and in their eyes flickered the first glimmer of fear. Out of the curtain of rain stepped a figure, massive shoulders, golden fur slick with water, eyes like molten bronze. A lioness. Her body bore scars of survival, a torn ear, a limp at her stride. But her presence radiated power that dwarfed the pack. Behind her slinked two younger lions, subadults, their growls a low harmony to her thunder. The lioness roared again, the sound rolling over the ridge like an earthquake. The wolves broke. The scarred wolf snarled once in defiance, but instinct overpowered hunger. He spun and fled, the pack scattering into the storm, tails vanishing into tall grass. Daniel stood frozen, chest heaving, rain streaming down his face. His staff sagged in his grip. The lioness climbed the rock, gaze fixed on the crate. Keto whimpered, pressing harder at the slats. The lioness lowered her head, nostrils flaring as she inhaled. Recognition flashed in her eyes. She nudged the crate with her muzzle, a sound rumbling in her chest. Not a roar, but a low, vibrating call. Daniel swallowed hard. His body screamed to protect, to hold the cub close. But deep inside, he knew he was not Keto's destiny. She was. Slowly, carefully, he dropped to his knees and unlatched the crate. The swollen wood creaked, then gave. The door swung open. Keto blinked against the rain, trembling. He looked first at Daniel, then at the lioness. Confusion flickered in his gaze, but instinct won. The cub stumbled out, paws slipping in the mud, and pressed his face into her chest. She lowered her jaws, clamping the scruff of his neck with gentleness only a mother can command. For a moment, she turned her gaze to Daniel. Their eyes locked, hers fierce, wild, eternal. His weary, human mortal. No words, but a message passed between them. You brought him to me. You honored the roar. Now let him go. Daniel bowed his head, rain masking the tears burning down his cheeks. Go on, little one, he whispered. Live. The lioness turned, Keto dangling safely from her jaws. The sub-adults closed around her, guardians in the storm. They melted into savanna, their outlines swallowed by rain and shadow. But just before the cub vanished into the tall grass, he looked back. His golden eyes met Daniel's one last time. He blinked slowly, once deliberate, then pressed against his mother's side and disappeared into the night. By dawn, the storm had passed. The camp lay battered but standing, the fences patched, the torches burned to stubs. The ground was scarred with paw prints, wolves retreating in panic, lions walking steady into the bush. Joseph joined Daniel at the ridge, his voice hoarse. I thought you were mad, but maybe madness is what saved him. Beal stood behind them, his expression softer than Daniel had ever seen. The law says we do not interfere. But mercy has no law. You bought him time. That was enough. Days later, Dr. Maya Ellison arrived from the sanctuary. With binoculars, she scanned the thorn thickets at the valley's edge. After hours, she spotted them. The lioness, her escorts, and a cub bounding clumsily between their legs. He pounced a beetle, missed, and tried again. His small roar rose, faint but determined. Daniel's chest tightened. He's alive. Maya lowered the binoculars, smiling. He's where he belongs. Daniel nodded, though his throat ached. Not mine to keep, just mine protect long enough. That night, the savannah lay calm. No howls, only the distant chorus of lions. A pride reunited, voices rolling like drums across the plain. Daniel sat on the same rock where he had opened the crate and pressed his palm to the stone. He could still feel the echo of her roar vibrating through it. Be wild, he whispered into the darkness. Be whole. For a moment, the night answered. A cub's faint huff, carried on the wind, or maybe only memory. Either way, Daniel smiled. He had given Keto back to the roar. And in that act, he understood. True courage isn't holding on. It's letting go when the time is right. If this story inspired you, remember, courage and compassion can change not only the wild, but also us. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who believes in the power of hope.